Brad.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that weren't here yesterday for the Bible school, it was a good day. Weather was perfect. God blessed us with good weather and a good turnout, good fellowship. All in all, it was a really good day yesterday. Thank God for that. And of course, we're going to turn in our Bibles this morning to the book of Deuteronomy again. We're nearing the end of it. We're currently in the chapters known as the Song of Moses. And, we've been a lot of review here. I know it seemed repetitive, and I've tried to move through it fast as I can, but we're almost there. And now we're going to be, once we get through the book of Deuteronomy here, we're going to get in the book of Joshua, and it's going to be different. We're going to see some new stuff. They've got a lot of activity going on, and they're going to cross that Jordan River, and they're going into a hostile land where all this book of Deuteronomy, Moses has been telling them if they don't watch it, they're going to succumb to the ways of the Canaanites, whether it be from trying to get help from farming or intermarrying with the women, the Canaanites, which has always been probably the biggest failure for the Jewish people back then when you looked at it. Abraham and Isaac, they always wanted their sons to have, marry right. They even go on a big hunt for a wife at times, and they knew it was kind of keep things, within the family there, the group, and we learned this early on when they were wandering in the wilderness, that Balaam, that old sneaky Balaam, that was one of the first things he done there, he went to old King Balak and tried to lure the Jewish men, the Israelites, out of the camp with immoral practices and stuff like that. So, you got a couple of big things they've got to watch out for when they get in this land. And that's just repeated over and over, and that's what they're going to face. But anyway, at this time, I'm going to start with chapter 32 in Deuteronomy. I'll start with verse 32, and because that's kind of about where we finished. And, Moses in the Song of Moses here is talking about their enemies right here, is what, the enemies and how they're going to be dealt with. So I'm at 32, and I'll read it. For their vine is the vine of Sodom. We're talking about the heathen population. That's going to be those people in Canaan and in other parts of the world. And and this vine is of the vine of Sodom, and the fields of Gomorrah, their grapes are grapes of gall, and their clusters are bitter. So these people are evil stock. Not of good stock is what these people are. They're not good by this. And we'll drop on down to 33, and their wine is the poison of dragons, the cruel venom of asps. This is more descriptive of their wickedness. And verse 34, is not this pertaining to the wickedness of Israel's enemies, whom God will punish in due time? What it says here at the bottom. The word this is not this, laid up in store with me and sealed up among my treasures. This is what's going to happen. To me belongeth vengeance, and to recompense. Their foot shall slide. Now that just basically means they're going to stumble or slip or be pushed back in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. And this is talking about the enemies, of course, because in the previous verses we talked about God but only let them win so many battles against Israel till they didn't want them to get God wouldn't let them get the big ego. They think they'd done this because they were so powerful or something like this. It's just going to be, they'll realize that God has allowed this to happen to Israel, to be defeated in the future, is not because of that, but because Israel had transgressed, had not done right. So we're continuing on talking about the enemies. And he shall say, where are their gods? Makes you think back to about the old fish god that stumbled over. We'll read about it in the future. Their rock in whom they trusted, the enemies who they trusted. Where's their gods now when they're being defeated? It says their power is gone up there right above where we just read that, and that's complete destruction. Yeah, I missed that verse. All right, 35. To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Let me get started again here. Their foot shall slide in due time, that's stumble, for the day of the calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. It's going to come fast. For the Lord shall judge his people and repent himself for his servants when he seeth their power is gone, and there is none shut up or left. Okay, so that is, for those that are none shut up or left, that's going to be those complete destruction for those that are in forts or out freely in the countryside moving around. And he shall say, where are their gods and their rock in whom they trusted? Verse 38, which did eat the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offering. Let them rise up and help you and be your protection. See now that even I am he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver you out of my hand. Self-explanatory. Nobody or nothing is going to get them, deliver them. Continue on. So I'm going to go to 42. For I lift up my hand to heaven and say, I live forever. And if I wet, that means to sharpen my glittering sword, and mine hand take hold on judgment, I will render vengeance to mine enemies and will reward them that hate me. All right, so vengeance is God, and God lives forever. That's those verses. Now I'm going to read 43 through 44. Rejoice, O ye nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and to his people. And Moses came and spake all the words of this song in the ears of the people, he and Hoshea, the son of Nun, which is just the birth name of Joshua. Joshua is here at this scene. All right. And remember, this Song of Moses is prophetic. God called Moses to write this song and deliver it. And, it just come to my mind there that, too, a song, think about that, if for passing it on to the generations, to just hear something spoken and, like that, but in the form of a song, it's caught by the people's ear. It kind of sticks better. I mean, I'm sure most of you can relate to music or songs like that. Things stick in your mind better because it flows better. So, what a good way for Moses to deliver, God to have Moses to deliver that to the people. So for the upcoming generations, they'll have that song in their mind, in their hearts, and it'll be easier to remember. So now I'm already 45 through 47. All right. And Moses made an end of speaking all these words to all Israel, the song. And he said unto them, set your hearts unto all the words which I testify among you this day, which ye shall command your children to observe and do, all the words of this law, everything in this song. For it is not a vain thing for you, because it is your life, and through this thing ye shall prolong your days in the land, whither you go over Jordan to possess it. So there again, repeat it again, obey equals blessing, basically what Moses is telling them right here, even at the end of this chapter. Hang on just. So we'll start back here with verse 45 through 47. we're talking about to continue to obey and be blessed is what Moses continues to tell them. All right, Moses made an end of speaking all these words. We got that. And he said unto us, set your hearts unto all the words which I testify among you this day, which ye shall command your children to observe and do all the words of this law. Of course, I'm repeating this again, but I will. For it is not a vain thing for you, because it is your life, and through this thing ye shall prolong your days in the land, whether you go over Jordan to possess it. Now, 48 through 52. All right, Testament. And the Lord spake unto Moses that selfsame day, saying, get thee up into this mountain, Abiram. Now, everybody's going to say, what about Mount Nebo and Pisgah? Because that's what, but this Abiram is the mountain range. And then there's a northern section of the mountain range, Pisgah. I call it the Big Ridge. And then Nebo's a mountain, an individual mountain. It's part of that. So you have to kind of noodle that out, make sure you don't get confused on them on the several names for where Moses is going, okay? So you get up this mountain of Abiram unto Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab. So we know we're in Moab, of course. That's where they've been camped, getting ready for this final push into the promised land, the land of milk and honey. And is over against Jericho. So if you look at a map, you'll see where they was camped at this time. It's kind of across the river from Jericho. That's going to be their first destination as they go into that promised land. And we got a big river crossing that's going to occur too. So we'll get to study into that here before long and study a little about River Jordan, or the Jordan River, however you want to call it. It's kind of a shadow of itself, of what it used to be. Back then, it had a lot more water in it, is what I'm told, and a lot of that's due to irrigation and different factors, but we'll get into that. All right, so they're in Moab, getting ready to cross over to Jericho, and behold the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel for possession. This land's going to be divided up amongst them, the different tribes. Verse 50, and die in the mount whither thou goest. Now, this is where he's going to perish, and be gathered unto thy people as Aaron thy brother died in Mount Hor. Same thing's going to happen, same process happened to him, to Moses' brother, and was gathered unto his people. Verse 51, because ye trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh. Now, it seems like a simple, Moses, just whacked a rock there, but the big thing was he didn't give God credit where God's credit was due. He didn't elevate God above himself there for the rest of the people to see. So that's a major trespass. Because right here, in the wilderness of them, because ye sanctified me not in the midst of the children of Israel. And, I don't think he done it on purpose by no means, but his heart wasn't right at the time, or that wouldn't have happened, I guess. Okay, verse 52, the last one of this chapter. Yet thou shalt see the land before thee, but thou shalt not go thither unto this land which I give the children of Israel. So I know you're all familiar with that, but the summary on that, to not give God his glory is a trespass. And for that, Moses is not going to go into the land of milk and honey. And like I said, I don't think he done it on purpose. I think he caught up in the moment, and his heart maybe wasn't right. Pressures of being the leader of that crowd had probably worked on him too. It couldn't have been easy to deal with all those, as God's own words in here at times, a stiff-necked people. To lead them like that would have been a job and a half for any man. All right, chapter 33. Now we get to the chapter here. When I was reading this, I hope some of it comes back to me, because this is Moses blesses the people. And as I was reading this, I kept thinking back to the time when Jacob, if you'll remember, Jacob on his deathbed blessed all of his sons. And it's even, in the names down through here is kind of in the same order. Reuben, of course, and, the oldest. But anyway, as we get into that, I might add some of that into it as it comes to me, if I can remember it. So I'm going to read 1 through 5, and then we'll go from there. 33, 1 through 5. And this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. This is some statements made at the time of, before they died. Just like I said, if you remember, Jacob done the same thing. We go kind of prophetic in a way here, and he blesses them the way things is going to be, gives them the good news or the bad news, And so that's what we're at here. And he said, this is Moses, the Lord came from Sinai. We all remember where that was. Down where the Ten Commandments was given in that part of land, and rose up from Seir. If you'll remember, that's Edom. That's from the land of Esau, the hairy brother of Jacob back in that time, the wild man, so to say. I guess being hairy like that kind of went hand in foot with the description of him being a wild man. And then, realizing too, we were talking just a few minutes ago that they needed to marry within their family, or the tribe, or the Jews, or the Israelites. They would seek out brides that needed to be. And of course, Esau was a wild man and a rebel, and we know what he went out and done. He didn't marry no Jewish women. He went out and married all the local women there. I think he had 3 of them, Hivites and another Ite, and I can't remember the other, but I remember bouncing back there and reading it a little bit. But and we know how they turned out. The tribe, the descendants of Esau turned out. We know how that went. But he failed to do what the family, his dad, would have wanted him to do, to marry, like Jacob did, to go get the bride. Remember him to Laban with the family back from where they came from. And Moses again tells them that God is great and has been with them for the past 40 years right here. Because right here, and the Lord came from Sinai and rose up in Seir, and he shined forth from Mount Paran, that's northeast Sinai Peninsula, and he came with 10,000s of saints from his right hand when a fiery law for them. Yea, and he loved the people, and all his saints are in thy hands, and they sat down at thy feet. Everyone shall receive of thy words. Moses commanded us at a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, and he was king of the Jeshurun. That word we become familiar with last week is Israel. Just another word for Israel, the upright one. When the heads of the people and the tribes of Israel were gathered together. So there again, like I said, Moses telling them that God is great and has been with them ever since they left Sinai, the past 40 years. Now I'm going to read verse 6. Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. All right. Moses knew the Reubenites would have it rough. Yeah, was making this verse, let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Think about that verse. Now remember, they got their inheritance. Where at? It's going to be on the eastern side. I just totally went blank. Yeah, the eastern side of the Jordan. All right. And we talked about, we know in the future, we have the luxury of knowing where the enemies of Israel come from in the future, that being Assyria and Babylon. So they're going to be coming from that direction. They're going to have to go through the Reubenite land in Manasseh before they ever get into the promised land, what we call the promised land now, when they defeat Israel in the future. So Moses is saying, let their numbers be great, not few, because they're going to have some battles in the future. They're going to, in the future, they're going to have some tough times coming in the future. And of course, they'll be the first, probably the fall, when there's them major enemies come in the future. And it's just a testament here, that Moses knows, God is revealing stuff there in a way. Moses is making statements that it's easy for us to see it, but they'd be like, well, I guess it's good that we're going to have a lot of people and they not die, but do they know what's coming in the future? Assyria's coming. No, they don't know that. But it's a good blessing, but we have the luxury of knowing a little bit what it means because we got hindsight of it. All right, so Moses knew the Reubenites would have it rough being exposed on the east side of the Jordan, and also Jacob's blessing. When I thought back on this, I looked back on Jacob's blessing, and warning Reuben was disqualified because of the moral failure. If you remember back, he didn't really have that great a blessing for Reuben because he'd slept with his concubine, if you remember that. So kind of a double story there. And now I'm going to read verse 7. And Moses was 120 years old. Wait a minute. No. Here we go, this side. And this is the blessing of Judah. And he said, Hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him unto his people. Let his hands be sufficient for him, and be thou a help to him from his enemies. And of course, that I've got here. Tribe of Judah, because Judah would lead, and because Reuben was disqualified. Remember, usually the oldest brother of the siblings would have been the one who'd be in charge, in the future when the father passed away. But Reuben was disqualified from what we just said a while ago in the past verse, because he slept with Jacob's concubine. So Judah's going to be the leader. And so we're going to verse 8 through 11. And of Levi, he said, and Moses is going to be the tribe of Levi, let thy Thummim and Urim be with the Holy One. You remember that's the two stones, one on each side of the I think it was on the shoulder of the high priest, and they'd go to God somehow. A decision was made from God on questions or subjects that needed God's guidance. And be with the Holy One, whom thou didst prove at Massah, and with whom thou didst strive at the waters of Meribah. Remember when they want water. Who said unto his father and to his mother, I have not seen him, neither did he acknowledge his brethren, nor knew his own children, for they have observed thy word and kept thy covenant. They shall, they shall teach Jacob thy judgments, and Israel thy law. They're going to be doing the work, the religious work. They shall put incense before thee, and whole burnt sacrifice upon thine altar. Bless, Lord, his substance, and accept the work of his hands. Smite through the loins of them that rise against him, and of them that hate him, that they rise not again. So if you remember, the tribe of Levi they've got certain duties they do, at the tabernacle, and it's really important. So it's so important they don't get part of the inheritance of the land, but all the other tribes are going to be responsible for taking care of them and providing for them in the future. And part of that was security as well, and like it's mentioned in these verses. So, all right, 8 to 11. All right, verse 9. No. Yep. All right, 8 through 11, verse 12. And of Benjamin, he was the baby brother back in Jacob's time, so it's another tribe. And he said, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, and the Lord shall cover him all the day long, and he shall dwell between the shoulders. All right. God would be with them, probably referring to the location of the temple being situated on the border of Judah and Benjamin. Yeah, I remember reading back on that when I was studying that there. So that where the temple ends up being is kind of situated on the border there. So they think that's kind of what it meant there, instead of being right in Judah, or it's right in between on the border. And Jacob's blessing to the Benjamin back then was a small but fierce tribe, and be skilled in battle. And so that's just something about, went back and looked on what Jacob had to say to Benjamin. Now I'm going to read 13 through 17. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that coucheth beneath. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, for the precious things put forth by the moon, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for precious things of the lasting hills, and for the precious things of the earth and fullness thereof, and for the goodwill of him that dwelleth in bush. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, and upon the top of the head of him that separated from his brethren. His glory is like the firstlings of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. And remember, the inheritance went to Ephraim and Manasseh from Joseph, because that's how those two tribes were formed, instead of just saying the tribe of Joseph, because on Jacob's deathbed, that's how he blessed them on his deathbed there is the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. And that's why you always end up with 12, because Levi is not going in to fight because they're keeping the temple. So when Jacob made that blessing decree, they always end up having that 12 tribes when they went into battle and stuff, just a little something there. So don't get confused and think there's 13 at different times, because it's really just 12, or think there's 11 because Joseph ain't mentioned, because you got Manasseh and Ephraim. All right. Yep. Yeah, and if you remember too, it kind of goes with Jacob's blessing here too. Reuben, he was disqualified, and the oldest would get a double blessing. That was the practice back then. Not only would be in charge, but Reuben should have got a double blessing. So when he was disqualified, therein that freed up some of that would have been gone to Reuben, was divided up with the doubles, with the two tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. So it didn't end up like nobody come up short like that. So it's just something to where Joseph got like a double blessing through his sons there. So verses 18 through 19. And of Zebulun he said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and of Issachar in thy tents. They shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall suck of the abundance of the seas and treasures hid in the sand. This is where they're going to dwell, and these items describe where they live success by the sea, and Issachar, that was Zebulun, was success by the sea, and Issachar is success in farming because of where their land inheritance is going to be. And if you go back and read Jacob's blessing, this kind of mirrors what Moses said here. It kind of about the same thing. Read 20 and 21. Let me get my spot. And of Gad, he said, Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. And he provided the first part for himself, because therein portion of the lawgiver was he seated, and he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. All right, fierce in verse 20, tear, arm, and head. That's what that refers to. Really, a fierce destroying of the enemy. And they kept their word. If you remember, to conquer Canaan, they wanted land on the east side of the Jordan, and Moses got worried right away. He's like, I don't know about this, because y'all have got a place where who says you're going to end up going over to do battle with us when we cross the Jordan River? But they kept their promise, and they do that. So, that end up being part of the blessing, and a promise of resilience is what Jacob had said in his blessing to the tribes. And now, verse 22. Let's see if I can get a little bit more. Yeah. I thought I could get finished with it. And of Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's whelp, and he shall leap from Bashan. That's up in the north, if you'll remember. Dan, like a lion, takes land in the north. Eventually, they were allotted land in the south, too, of some. And that leap, that's what that pertains to there in that verses. And Moses knew that was what was going to happen back then before it ever did. And Jacob's blessing to his son Dan at the time, and his people were to be like a small but fierce tribe and smart enough to outwit larger armies. And we'll see that's the way they survive in the future. The tribe of Dan actually was like that when we get into the upcoming books of the Bible. All right, let me read verse 23. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord, possess thou the west and the south. All right. So they will possess fertile land west and south of the lake, Sea of Galilee, Lake of Galilee. And Jacob's blessing was dough set free in the mountains, the way he had worded it, around Galilee, fast, agile, and resilient. And also, if you think about it, this is the land where Jesus taught as well. All right, so with that, I'll stop, and I'll try to finish this up next week, gotta be.